What's going on, y'all? Machiavelli Mills TV. Y'all hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. So look, y'all, Miss Shaunie O'Neal. Shaunie O'Neal, businesswoman. She was over basketball wives. She is the ex-wife of one of the most recognizable sports figures of all time, Shaquille O'Neal. Right? She came out to say, I believe in her book, that when she thinks about it, she never was really in love with Shaq. She never was in love with him, right? And so I don't have the full context of the whole quote. So like that can be dangerous to cast aspersions on her. But it's really got a lot of people talking. And I got a lot of people looking at her funny, right? So they like, why would she say this? Why would you reveal that you didn't love Shaq, right? Because honestly, some things need to stay in your head. There are some things that you should keep to yourself and not divulge it to other people for the sake of sparing people embarrassment and harm. Okay? What do I mean by that? Shaq, of course, he probably gonna be embarrassed by that, but he admittedly said he wouldn't have loved himself either because he was an adulterer. Infidelity was a thing of his, right? But I'm talking about the children too. Because in some instances, like some kids don't care. Hey, you never loved my father, whatever. Some kids be like, yo, you never loved dad? You never was in love with him? No, she said she didn't say she didn't love him. She was never in love with him. And to some kids, that can break their heart that the man that they love, you were never in love with him. Right? And they could look, they could have certain feelings about that could make them feel a certain way. Maybe towards you, the wife, you know what I mean? Or towards their father, whatever. And sometimes it can cause friction. And we know these things can happen, especially when a parent reveals hurt by being hurt by another parent. That hurt can transfer to kids sometimes, right? I'm looking at the whole situation with Gary Owen and his wife. Gary Owen was with his wife. I don't remember how many years he was with her. He said he tried to get a divorce going a couple of times, like twice before that. And they just kept it going. But he said eventually they got to a point where they were roommates, right? And while living as roommates, he started to see other women or whatever, right? Started to do some cheating. Because he said him and his wife would only have sex on like special occasions or whatever. He cheated. The wife found out. They split up. The kids are so hurt at the hurt, I guess the way that he hurt their mother. They haven't spoken to him in 3.5 years. He called them, they ain't picking up the phone, they avoiding him, all of that, right? And so now you have kids who feel a way about their father, because you have kids who feel a way about their father because of how their mother was hurt in the situation, right? And so I'm thinking about this can go to Shaunie O'Neal. If the father really expressed hurt about that, which Shaq is not expressing it, but even they could feel a way like, damn, you didn't love dad? And they could cause them to feel a way about their mom, you know what I mean? But I believe she's saying this to sell her book. When you say something like that, it gets people like going, it gets people talking. Obviously, I'm talking about it, right? So it gets people like intrigued. What? You never loved them? It gets all the blogs spinning, all of that, right? Obviously, Shaunie O'Neal, she's moved on, she's remarried. And again, Shaq has admitted to wrongdoings in their marriage and speaks with regret for how he handled things. But I believe saying you were never in love with him is hurtful. And I understand, even if it's true, I believe it should be kept in because sometimes there are unnecessary daggers to be thrown at people, especially when publicly Shaq has never spoken ill of Shaunie at all and never thrown her name under the rug or in the mud or nothing. He's never drug her name through the mud or raked her name through the coals or anything like that. So sometimes I feel like some of the daggers couldn't be unnecessary. Now, here's the other thing people are saying. How could you never have been in love with a man when you gave him about 5 kids and you were married to him for all this long and all of that? So I'm going to say this. I've heard older women express being with a person for 15, 20 years and never being in love with them. I'm not listening. It's not as uncommon as y'all might believe. And this is where it happens. A woman, she has a friend, and he's a good friend. He's always there for her. He's whenever she needs something, he's dropping everything to go see what she needs. He's funny and all of that, and he's always just there for her in every time of despair, right? And at some point, her friends convince her, just give him a chance, just give him a chance, because the brother is vying for her love, okay? And she just says, okay, what the hell, let's just do this, right? Now, that woman loves that man as her friend and as a person who's always there for her. They begin dating. They end up having kids. Sometimes they get married. And her love is for him is based upon how good of a friend he was. And she let it develop into some type of romantic situation. But she was never swooning. She never swooned about that man. Her heart never fluttered when that man walked into a room. She never felt butterflies when that man was in her presence or when that man texted her phone when his name would pop up on the screen. She never felt those things. She didn't. She was just, okay, this is my friend. He's there for me. Maybe this is the guy I'm supposed to be with, because people say, be with a man who's always there for you, who never lets you down, who's dependable. He's a dependable guy, and I'm just going to rock with him because he want to be with me, and we just going to make this work. Unfortunately, that never really results in good love stories. It never really does, because the woman she's not in love with you. And so even when times get hard, sometimes they're not really prone to stand because, hey, I'm not in love with you anyway like that. So when stuff goes and hits the fan, it's like, yo, I just was with you because, honestly, some women be with them because, honestly, it was convenient for them. Honestly, they just like, hey, I got me a good guy. I'm just going to sit here. And they don't really be in love with him like that. So these things can occur. That's why I tell men, if her friends got to convince her to talk to you, she ain't the one for you, dog. I want the woman, when I walk in a room, she say, I want him right there. That's the one right there. I need him. That's the man for me. I need the woman that say that man right there, I need him. I want him. That's what I want my woman to say about me. I need that man. I love that man. I like that man. I'm into that man. I don't want her to be, oh, guys, I mean, he's nice, but, I don't know if I really want to. He's okay. I don't need that in my life. I need a woman who is sure of me and confidently is confidently choosing me. You hear me? Not her friends got to get her up to doing it and build her up and talk her off the cliff, talk her into diving into the relationship. No, it's not going to work like that, right? Because ultimately she never was in love with you, right? Now in Shaunie O'Neal's case, because her case is separate from other women I've heard say they weren't in love with men. She saw a guy, she fell in love, well, not fell in love. She got married to a guy who was a multi-millionaire. So people are going to question her motives. Because see, a lot of the women I'm talking about that fell in love with, they ended up being in long-term relationships or having kids or marriage, or ended up in marriages with their close guy friends. Those guys, 9 times out of 10, were not multi-millionaires. Shaunie O'Neal's case, she was with the most recognizable superstar athlete in the world. One of the most recognizable superstar athletes in the world. You got Deion Sanders. You got Michael Jordan. Shaquille O'Neal was up there with them all. Mike Tyson, he was in that stratosphere and still is one of the most recognizable faces. Your mama, your grandmama, your auntie, your stepmama, you hear me? Your baby sister, your favorite girl cousin, she don't watch basketball, but she know who Shaq is, right? And Shaunie knew who Shaq was off of his stature and his presence. Some people might be like, well, were you with Shaq for the bread? For the fact he was going to help you come up? That you would be able to, he would be able to upgrade your lifestyle? People are looking at Shaunie from the side out with a side eye view because unlike the other women I described, she's with a multi-millionaire. So it's like, yeah, some women, when they with a multi-millionaire, they don't care about being in love. They care about security, financial well-being, and, and having a great life, easy life for her and her children that she would bear for this man. That's it. And so you got some people looking at Shaunie like, were you gold digging? Were you looking for a meal ticket? And honestly, who knows, right? Who knows? Hopefully she wasn't. But people look at that differently. But I do know, I'm going to say this. I just wanted to clarify that I've heard of women not being in love with the man and still having children with him, being married to him, etc. I heard women say this. Seriously, they weren't in love with the man. They just were like, oh, he's a good guy. He's here. He's dependable. He's always here. He's reliable. He's a good provider. Hey, what the hell? And that does not result in a good love story. You know? So but in this case with Shaunie, people looking at it like, hey, Shaq had all his status and wealth. Were you in love with the money and status that could come from being his wife? Because I think she even said she was in love with the idea of being a wife and living living a lifestyle as a wife or something like that. Y'all can expound upon it. But yeah, people will look at her with a side-eye view. And again, I understand that too. But I do know that there are instances where women be in long-term relationships or long marriages and have children with men that they are not in love with. You know? So yeah, man. But I just think in this instance, I feel like she should have kept it to herself. But I feel like she said it because she's trying to sell that book. That's the way to get people reading when you got excerpts like that being taken out of the book. You're never really in love with the man and all that, right? Shaq has handled it gracefully. And I know sometimes, I'm going to say this, when women move on to new relationships, they just feel like, what's the word I'm looking for? When they move on to new relationships, and when a relationship don't work, they just feel like, oh my God, they think about the worst in everything. They just start to just think the worst about everything. Maybe when the relationship don't work, they just start to think the worst about everything. We just were never in love. Maybe I never was in love with him. They try to rationalize it. Why it didn't work. And this could be an instance of that where they didn't work out and now she's trying to rationalize why he was a cheater. Why I was never in love with him. Why it didn't work. I never was in love with him like that. Why they tried to wash their hands with it or try to come to terms. Yeah, rationalize why it didn't work. And that's their logic for it. Hey, he was never in love with me. I was never in love with him. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's not that case. They think the worst when a relationship doesn't work and they just start to go off the edge about things, you know, and that could be that situation, what it is. It also could be that she's now with Pastor Keon, right? And sometimes, and I'm not saying this is the situation, sometimes when women move forward in a new relationship, in order to make the new man comfortable, they start talking about, hey, I was never in love with him. I was only in love with you, baby. I never was in love with him. I'm in love with you. That was never love. I never was in love with him. Never the way, I never was in love with him. I was in love with you. Look at the way we interact with each other. Look at the way we engage with each other. Look at the way how compatible we are. Look at the way we swoon at each other. Look at the butterflies we have with each other. And it could be a situation of that. Now, I would hope not. Because they're both grown adults and you gotta understand, man. I never believe in down talking an ex of mine to appease a new person that I'm with. I never believe in that. I just feel like that's just crazy. You don't have to do that. It's not becoming of a person. And if you were with that person for a long time, there was something that you enjoyed about that person. There was something that was drawing them to you. That was something that was keeping you in that relationship. For sure. So I don't believe in trashing the ex when I get with a new person in order to make them comfortable. You just make them comfortable by loving on them, enjoying their company, and living life and growing with that person rather than trying to trash the ex and all that. I just think that's corny. But I don't know. I believe she said it to sell a book. But I feel like it should have been, it's best to keep those things in out of fear of embarrassing or hurting other people. Shaq and potentially her children. Right? And again, her children may not feel a way about it, but they might too. So you got to be very careful about that, man. Machiavelli Mills TV, I'm out. Peace.